Hi, everyone, and welcome to Subsistence Crop, a podcast cultivated by the Cannabis Studies Lab at Cal Poly Humboldt, where we talk about human cannabis relationships beyond commerce and prohibition.
I'm joined here today with Keaghan and Kai, and it's Friday. It's October. Damn, what day is it? October 25th, 2024. And yesterday, on October 24th, 2024, the three of us, plus Sonny Buckner, we got to take a trip out to Mattole Valley Sun Grown. What did y'all think of that drive?
Long, deep in the hills, but beautiful location.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was a great drive. The way out was pothole ridden, and
So was the way back?
yeah, no, it was a fun time. We were hauling ass on the way there and hauling ass on the way back. It was fun.
Yeah, the roads were mostly paved, and really like it was very typical drive for Humboldt, and a very typical drive for going to a farm, and honestly not that typical because of the amount of dirt roads that we went on. You know, there are farms, right, Keaghan, that would be a lot more dirt road, a lot more elevation change even.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought it was honestly one of the more accessible farms that we've talked about or seen.
That's a good point. So yeah, Mattole Valley Sun Grown, they recently won a California State Fair award for their sour diesel, which was released by iPoppy under the name Sour Poppy, but it was their sour diesel, and we did indeed see that sour diesel in the field. What did y'all think of that?
It was scrappy looking.
But it smelled so good.
Yeah, man, the nose on it was ridiculous. But yeah, real long, tall, kind of like stocky, long, tall, stocky looking scrappy plants. But the nose on it was just incredible, as Kai said.
So bright, so fruity.
So green.
Yeah. And then can y'all describe kind of the difference that you notice between fresh frozen harvest and what might be considered a traditional harvest in this area?
I mean, just in working in both, I know that fresh frozen, you work a lot quicker and it's a lot more concentrated. I mean, you might be working on taking out, like 20 to 30 plants a day total and getting them all bucked down and properly frozen comparatively to taking down 150 or 200 plants in a day and then just getting them all hung up to dry. It's a lot of a different process, and it's a lot more detail-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a very small and personable operation going on. They care about every detail super intricately, like even down to the drying rooms where they were keeping, like Keaghan said, around maybe 50 to 100 plants total from the whole season. And it's really not about quantity, it's about the quality.
Yeah. And such an interesting thing to see a farm that has, so much of the stuff that's set aside for fresh frozen. So it's going to be put into concentrate. But they still have the things that they set aside for flour. And some of that flour is going to be available through Nasha Direct, right? And from what I heard, there's certain farms around that are going to be releasing their flour through that for the first time. And that's interesting to me. What does that mean to y'all in terms of like flour being available that was only available as rosin before?
Personally, that is something that I always love to see from companies, even if it's just a small batch release of some flour that has been, winning a lot of awards as rosin, or has been, sweeping the market and has been getting a lot of buzz as rosin, because those terp profiles are really just turned up to 10 in my mind when you go ahead and you get extracts. So when you go ahead and you get the full feeling from being able to smoke the flower, I always love being able to juxtapose that against the rosin feel. And I think it's one of my more favorite kind of metrics of really testing a strain.
100%. I mean, I'm a flower smoker personally, so like I always am super stoked to see the flower come out. Like I love seeing the plant in its original form. Like you said, you get the experience of terpenes on 10, but how's the plant when it's, just dried? And I love to experience that. Like,
How would y'all describe the difference between like the same cultivar, the flower high versus the rosin high?
I get baked as hell off the rosin. I mean, it's more of a body high, I'd say, rather than a head high to me. But the high is more just like stony, real stony.
A good strain that comes to mind recently that I've had the flower of that is really, almost primarily and exclusively really known for its rosin production is Whitethorn Rose.
Yes.
We were really lucky to go and visit, Johnny Casali and his farm and Rose not too long ago and take a look at some of what they have going on over there. And then I got my hands on some of the bud of Whitethorn not too long thereafter, and also had some rosin and did it back to back. And I think the biggest difference in between the two that I found was with the flower more so. It was a lot more of a mellow effect and a lot slower onset than the extracts. And overall, I think that it hit kind of a lot more of the therapeutic values that I'm looking for out of that strain specifically, and especially a lot of its calming effects that I've noticed. And like when I, smoke the rosin, I get an amazing terpene profile, but not as much of a high from it. It is a lot more of a, kind of instant gratification high for myself.
I have to agree. Like that White Widow, like specifically that White Widow. When you smoke the bud, you get that full profile, and it's just a much fuller high in my opinion, just like what Keaghan was saying. Like a little bit slower of the onset, but I feel it everywhere. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my head. I feel it behind my eyes. When I usually smoke rosin, I get that flavor. I get to experience the terpenes in its fullest form, in my opinion.
I just get smacked.
But I just get smacked,
Just get smacked.
Yeah.
So, there was one cultivar that we got to enjoy while chilling near the farm afterwards called Dream Pop. Y'all remember that?
God.
And Dylan was telling us how it was bred by Sean Cherry out in Salmon Creek. And Andres rolled it up for us. It was a beautiful roll. And when we smoked it, I immediately noted terpenoline, osmine. And to me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is something that's like kind of hazy actually. Like this is very different than what normally is grown up here. And they're definitely used, I feel like, I've heard of other places that had a heirloom that had that flavor profile. For instance, when we were at Huckleberry Hill Farms, right? Margie's Magic is very much up that alley as well. And, that type of stuff is notable because the industry knows it doesn't wash, right? So we're not going to see that Dream Pop in rosin form, chances are. And this is something that personally I felt very, sad because I very much enjoy those types of profiles, both for the flavor, but really more for the dragon, because I'm a dragon chaser more than a flavor chaser. And, that kind of uppity high is something I look for. And it's something that not just because of the latitude up here, but because of that yield in water-based solventless extraction, that it just doesn't make it to the end consumer. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done in that end. And I talked with Dylan a little bit about this. I've talked with Baron and Nasha about this, and it's something where the interest is there. People recognize that there's a dearth there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing like what can actually come, whether that's new processes, whether that's, who knows. But yeah, what do y'all think about that?
I thought it was fascinating yesterday when we were talking with Dylan about, Blue Dream specifically.
Yes.
Blue Dream is another one of those strains that, is kind of a little hazy and does not wash well in water, and that has kind of been historically known. Granted, recently we've all been starting to see a little bit of Blue Dream rosin kind of creep up into the
So
legal
cold.
market.
So cold.
A little bit. We had a pretty interesting conversation about potentially adding that terpene profile onto a more flavorless
Yeah, talking about
rosin.
a blendo, essentially.
blendo,
Yeah, what
which-
do y'all think about blends? How are blends different in flower form than they are in rosin form?
I think with a flower, you're always going to have a dominant kind of flavor from one of the strains, and when that ends up happening, you still get a bit of a mix out of the two. So one might come through more obviously if you have a haze or a jack. 9 times out of 10, you're going to taste the haze or the jack more than whatever else you put in there. But with rosin, if you're mixing things, you can get a brand new flavor that has spawned from the two that you never would have expected. You can just get one of the flavors or something similar to how it would have tasted if you mix those two strains in flour as well. It is a lot more variable.
I just know I would love to try something that is blended like that. And there's also like certain analogies, I guess. Lots of people draw comparisons between the budding cannabis industry and the established wine industry. And, blends are definitely a thing over there. Starting to see it become more of a thing over here, and really seeing that Mattole is also on that track, and that those types of blends are because I've really only been seeing them more so on the legacy market. And, that's another thing that is worth pointing out and reiterating, is that I think most trends come from the legacy market and then show up on the legal market. There are obviously some examples of the contrary, like, very large beverage companies seem to be something that is more legal than legacy just because of high upfront costs. But when it comes to like actual new processes that are really pushing the needle, stuff like, I don't know, pressing rosin with a hair straightener like we were talking about earlier in lab, that kind of stuff is not happening at a corporation, you could say. What are y'all's thoughts?
I mean, going back to what Keaghan was saying earlier about the Blue Dream rosin being spotted outside, even though, Blue Dream isn't known for producing any sort of rosin because of the low yield. It was very interesting to hear Dylan have interest in maybe crossing it with one of his more dumpier strains, such as, I believe, was it GMO or I think it was GMO.
Yeah, he was talking about his GMOs or potentially maybe even another like the dark rainbow. He was also talking about as well, which is a GMO cross, I believe. Just he was talking about a couple of his strains that have more neutral terpene profiles and seeing if the breeding process would yield a more blue dreamy or hazy kind of cross.
To me, it's super exciting. I mean, there's science to be done. There's new things to try. And I would love to have a Blue Dream rosin. I'd love to smoke a gram of Mattole Blue Dream rosin. That would be heavenly. And I'm excited for the new processes like blends. And I don't have anything against them, honestly. I think they're good.
I don't know. I think blends have a very important part coming forward and moving forward, especially in the concentrate area. On the legacy market, we've been starting to see more medicinal blends of even different types of extracts being mixed together for different, medicinal uses, which is fascinating in my mind, and I'd love to see people do a little bit more research upon that and seeing what kinds of concentrates have different properties and how they can be used in that sense. And also with blends like in the traditional wine market, I think it would be a very easy way to go ahead and cut costs if you go ahead and you have less than a perfect yield for one plant that for one crop that you go ahead and you decide to wash. Doesn't yield well, but you have a great extra amount from something that dumped this year. Why don't you just mix them together and see what happens from it? And you sell it for $5 less than everything else that you have. You make your consumers happy, and you get rid of things that you wouldn't have used anyways.
Try something new.
I would very much like to try that Blue Dream stuff, but yeah, there's a lot out there. We were very, very honored to be able to take that trip as a Cannabis Culture Club, and are looking forward to doing more such trips. Yeah, more students next time.
More students for sure.
A little bit earlier in the season.
A little bit earlier in the season so we can see a full field.
That'd be great. Yeah, maybe like 2 to 3 weeks earlier. Be awesome to also organize a field trip where we just give somebody a free workforce for a day, get everybody a little bit of farm experience. That'd be dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really would be dope, if that were something the DCC would allow.
Damn you, DCC.
Oh, man. What other farms would be on y'all's wish list, huh?
I think Alpenglow would be really cool to go see.
You knocked it. They got the stuff. Alpine.
I think that would be pretty dope.
That would be dope. They're
I think
close
High
enough
Water
too.
Crystals Farm would be really cool to go see because there's really not many people doing dry farming.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be amazing to go ahead and really be able to expose the club members to, and also just be able to bring more awareness around that in general would be really awesome.
Yeah, dry farming. Oh, my goodness. I remember when I first heard of dry farming, and it really is something like most people don't know about, even if they're from around here. Definitely most people have never tried dry farm cannabis. And one thing that I always bring up is arguably for every land race that people are, fiending, that at some point in its history, that land race was, grown, dry farmed, arguably, somewhere between its cultivation and domestication stages. So, dry farming brings out maybe more natural expressions of the plant, one could argue. It taps into whatever genetic code is there that existed and that hasn't been tampered with by breeding. Because one thing that we know from agronomy is that when you're breeding plants and you're domesticating them after that cultivation stage, after a foraging stage, one of the things you're doing is increasing its capacity to take in water, or making it addicted to the water, as Sunshine would say.
I think another farm that would be really cool to go and check out would be Moonmade.
Mm-hmm.
Fig Farms too.
Fig Farms would be sweet.
Well, Fig Farms is an indoor farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that would be a quite a bit more of a drive, but we could definitely get that done too. Maybe that's the summer trip.
Yeah, that's a summer trip.
I mean, along the same topic, right next to Dylan's farm, there is Exotic Farm.
Yeah,
And
exotic flavors.
Exotic flavors.
Not saying I'd like to go to that farm, but it
I'm
does
not saying we
interest.
wouldn't.
Not saying we wouldn't. We'd love to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an interesting juxtaposition just because of, you have two farms, they're right next to each other in terms of their APN number, and they are both sun-grown farms. And you can definitely see that there's a difference in, the amount of infrastructure that was needed to be invested. And really, when you look at those two farms versus non-sun-grown farms, you can especially see that gap in the amount of infrastructure that's needed. And even in the fresh frozen harvest process that we saw, and I wonder what the harvest process over at Exotic Flavors looks like. I don't think they do any fresh frozen. I imagine it's something that they might do in the future or try to do, just like everyone probably is going to have to explore it just to keep up. Yeah, the thing with these farms that are way further out there, right? They're off grid, and a lot of the post processing requires energy. So Dylan was telling us how like really it was the drying and like running dehumidifiers that was the most electricity hogging thing and the last thing that he was using generators for. And now after receiving this grant to upgrade his solar and also doing only mostly fresh frozen, he will be able to swear off generator use. And that's something that, you know, I can hear a bunch of hippies clapping or something like that. We're clapping too.
Yeah, I think a really important thing moving forward is to help kind of, push forward more of these grants of sustainable energy. I mean, talking to Dylan, we heard about, like $50,000 solar energy grant that was given to a couple hundred farms that most likely will go under this year, which is really unfortunate. And why are a lot of these, we know why a lot of this funding is going towards them as a last-ditch effort and almost as, a bit of a safety net so that they might be able to net a bit of a profit in selling their land. But, I mean, that doesn't really feel like a great intention around it, and obviously that's not what it was set up for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can't speak to any government programs' intentions, but I think we can definitely speak to like what we've heard on the ground in terms of the populace's feelings around how they receive it, and that's really been the most interesting thing and the coolest part of taking students from the Cannabis Culture Club at Cal Poly Humboldt out into the field is being able to have those types of conversations.
Thank you for growing with Subsistence Crop, a podcast by the Cannabis Studies Lab at Cal Poly Humboldt.